Don in London, good morning. It's October the 19th. My video is all about recovery from addictions to either substances or behaviour or both. My addictive substance, alcohol, my behaviour around those years of drinking. Probably addicted to people, places and things in a very unhelpful way. That is, trying to fit in with people in the right place, doing the right things, having the right things. So always desiring and needing and wanting to be a part of whatever was going on in a useful way. So I bent myself in all different directions to fit in, and I made up the rules of my life and my game as I went along to suit the situation I felt I wanted more than anything. I guess the right career, the right girl and the right surroundings. Now that's not so bad unless we put everything into it without really understanding what is life about. So it's not about fitting in a way which means we have to bend ourselves in all directions in order that we feel right. Indeed, we need to feel right and then see how we fit with the world. Not to try and control it, not to be the best at everything, not even to be perfect at one single item of living. It's all about learning life onwards and having what is called the humility to keep on learning. So why did I say all that? What's it got to do with addiction? Well, for me, I always felt less than, not good enough, not in the right place with the right people, doing the right things, and often compromising me and my values and my ethics because it felt the only way to survive. And so the more I did that, the more I feared being found out as inadequate based on how I wanted to live my life. And life for me is very simple: learning how to be loved, love other people, and useful in whatever capacity we have. So it's not that someone will put on my gravestone, he had a wonderful career or two and then careered off into oblivion. It's this person did as best they could with what they had and made good choices based on reality. That would be a good epitaph, actually. But I don't want to die just yet. But for a lot of years I would have preferred not to wake up because life just put me in a spin and I lost the plot big time because my ethics were inconsistent with the type of things I was doing. So what made all that nonsense possible? To resolve those inner conflicts, I drank alcohol, took the edge off me, fixed me, and made life palatable most of the time until I became completely dependent on alcohol and then addicted to it, or the ism which is often behind the substance or behaviour that we have. Self-harm gone to extremes, and we don't even know we're self-harming until it's too late, because it's a gradual decline, I guess, or was for me, and I didn't even know it was happening. I was ignorant of my dependencies and self-harm. As a consequence, if I wasn't true to myself, how could I be true to anyone else? So it's no surprise at the moment, and probably for a good while, I'm happily single, although sometimes I even potter into websites about matchmaking, because I'm human. I do all these things. It's all part of life. I don't know our natural state is to be alone, and I'm not anymore. I have a fellowship which helps me keep sober, and a fellowship where I found friends, which then enabled me to be part of family and find friends out there in the world. So my life has changed completely. So no longer driven by the next right action in a negative way, just simply trying to identify what the next right action can be. So my videos are all about recovery and how a fellowship has helped me become part of family, society, community, you name it, in whatever way I can be useful. And that can be through work or through endeavours which I feel I can do. So the march of time has afforded me the luxury of freedom to choose, and stop being driven by what if this happens, what if that happens. I can only deal with what is happening today. Yesterday's history, it informs me, and it's part of my life story, and tomorrow is yet to happen, and I can make plans for the future as long as I recognise I live in the here and now. So it's the journey which counts in all of this, the journey of life which counts, not the destination. And there's a Rugby International World Cup being in process right now, and as each team gets knocked out, the feelings in those teams, all the effort they put into getting to that World Cup, and then on the turn of one decision, in case of the Welsh team, it knocked them out of the semi-final and the way through to the final. How did they feel about that? Well, 1,001 commentators giving advice and support and analysis, analysed and thought out to death. So often we overthink where we are and where we're headed, because we put too much in the destination and not enough in enjoying the journey. It's like, when we get past this part, we'll move on we'll be okay, rather than say, let's just enjoy the part we've got to play today. So a different philosophy for me, not living in the future, it'll be okay there. I need to live in the present day, and it needs to be okay as it can be, or not okay as it is sometimes. And this fellowship, which helped me, it's a fellowship I don't speak for, but I speak about it quite often, and that is Alcoholics Anonymous, the very last place on the planet I would expect to be. Well, back then, when I didn't realise I had an alcohol problem, and what was behind it: fear of life. So no longer fearing life, but more to fear in some ways, not only an alcoholic in recovery, but also with other chronic conditions which I deal with on a day-to-day basis. But Fellowship of AA has taught me a way forward into today. So I've been rocketed into the fourth dimension of time, living in the moment of now, where anything can be possible based on reality. And it's living life based on reality means there are limits, and I need to be aware what those are. So limited in some ways by reality, but able to make good free choices around what I can do today. So I share here about Fellowship of AA, but I don't represent it. AA is a big part of my life and helping others find sobriety. And I utilise this little card which has got the AA preamble on it, what you need to know about AA. And inside it has got the 12 steps and 12 traditions, which you can just about see there. So there are 12 steps for me to learn how to live life sober one day at a time, open, honest and willing to change as life changes. And then there are 12 traditions which hold the fellowship together in unity, service and recovery. And it sounds like a big thing, but actually we don't need to learn it all in one go. All we need to learn is how to be sober one day at a time and see what else happens. And we make our choices as we go. So I'll be sharing the AA preamble in a moment, and then sharing from this book, Daily Reflections, one page a day based on AA literature and people's experiences in the fellowship, and then their experiences in life, living life. There's no point in being part of a fellowship which is unconnected to reality. It drives us into reality at the pace which suits us, at the only pace we can go, the pace at which our heads can deal with and our feelings can deal with what's going on. So there's no race in recovery, it's simply the journey. So the AA preamble, and I'll share a bit of extras in it because it's helpful to me to remind myself the limits of what the fellowship is about, so the fellowship doesn't become dominant. Sobriety needs to be dominant, not the fellowship. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. So we just share. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. It's as simple as that. The only requirement is a desire to stop drinking. And that means there are no rules, laws or regulations to get in the way and stop you being a part of something. Although people sometimes think they are rules, laws and regulations, but those are made up by those people. They are merely suggestions about conduct and what's going to work. There are no dues or fees for AA membership, so you're not obliged to pay for it. But we are self-supporting through our own contributions. So we don't get outside help. We pay our way with a prudent reserve of money, which is just enough to pay rent for rooms and meetings, tea, coffee, biscuits and literature, and some very basic admin across the fellowship, which of course is worldwide. But there are no leaders in AA, just trusted servants. That's everybody. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution. But everybody in AA is allied to something like that outside of fellowship. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, but often people do engage in controversy because that's part of their life. Neither endorses nor opposes any causes, but everybody outside the fellowship has something, or people who go to fellowship have outside causes. And that's important because you'll hear all about them: politics, religion, organisations, outlooks, views, judgments. You'll hear all about those in the fellowship. But the fellowship has no affiliation to any of them, which means that we're all the same size. We all go for one common purpose, a desire to stop drinking and stay stopped. And then the primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. So people get the wrong idea about AA, and people in AA get the wrong idea about AA as well. Because if you're just merely a human being with 12 steps and 12 traditions, it means you don't control other people. You are powerless over people, places and things. And if ever you do start to try and impose your will and your outlook on others, they will tell you to bugger off if they've got any common sense. It's about freedom to choose without instruction. Well, maybe that's not right. We do have instruction in as much as we share and instruct each other about what we've done. But even that's very loose. They are suggestions. So whatever you do in the fellowship, don't be fooled. Don't let somebody have power over you. They may suggest things very strongly, or they may actually say, you must do it my way or it's the highway. And there was a phrase called, will you go to any lengths to find your sobriety? And if the answer is yes, I am desperate enough to say I am powerless over alcohol and life is unmanageable, then that's a good starting point. My view is newcomers come in, and if you ask them, will you go to any lengths to be sober, they'll look at you very confused and say, what on earth are you talking about? What lengths will I go to? And there's a trap in there for people who think they know it all. If you knew how to get sober yourself when you first came to AA and somebody said, will you go to any lengths, you might have said yes. But the most important thing is not to impose views, beliefs on others. And sometimes people forget that and they'll tell you what to do. And I suggest, if somebody's telling you what to do and it sounds reasonable, maybe do it. But no, it's okay to say no. Because one of the most important words I've learned in recovery is no. I don't feel, the answer is no. An emphatic no is better than a half-hearted yes. Summarising Gandhi there. An emphatic no is better than a half-hearted yes. No, I don't feel like it. No, I don't feel that's the right way. No. Simple no. But if you'd asked me to say no over the whole of my life, I would be confused by the no. No. I didn't know how to say no. So I got stuck saying yes. and then trying to fit in. I mean, it gave me some very good times saying yes, and good careers, but when I look back, were those careers the careers which were right for me? There's a simple answer to that. No. But I did them because I felt I ought to. I felt obliged. And often obligation will send us into places which are just so harmful and toxic. By the time we find ourselves in them, the pub, the bar, the restaurant, alcohol may seem like a good choice to find oblivion again. So part of this whole process is learning to say yes to the right things and no to the wrong things. And what is right for one person may not be right for another. So we have to get a bit of sober time to make sense of what choices are we able to make which are right for us as people, as individuals. So every person has their path, but what I do know is there are 12 steps which help a person be free to make choices based on life as it is, living reality and coping with it. So that's what the steps have given me. And I may have gone on a long time about that, but sometimes I need to. And I'll share the AA Daily Reflection and then some reflections from me about yesterday and today, and then maybe something from before, depending on time. And when I run out of juice, my internal energy. So the AA Daily Reflection for today, it talks about AA's main taproot. The principle that we shall find no enduring strength until we first admit complete defeat is the main taproot from which our whole society has sprung and flowered. So this is what it is. Defeated and knowing it, I arrived at the doors of AA, alone and afraid of the unknown. This could be me. I think it was me. A power outside of myself had picked me up off my bed, guided me to the phone book, then to the bus stop, and through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, not quite me. Once inside, I experienced a sense of being loved and accepted. Well, the majority of the time I did. Something I had not felt since early childhood. Or, in my case, I don't know that I ever felt it in early childhood. May I never lose the sense of wonder I experienced on that first meeting with AA, the greatest event of my entire life. Well, for that person it was the greatest event of their entire lives. But what I've come, you see, I had that was a quick, automatic, this is right for me moment, a spiritual lightning bolt, if you like. But unfortunately I didn't get a spiritual lightning bolt, I just got a spiritual awakening of the educational variety. I sort of knew I was in the right place in that first meeting because my neighbours were there, some friends from the health club, some friends from around the area, and my mother's best friend, who said to me, well, I'm glad you're here, I'm sure it's about time you were. But being a cantankerous person, full of self-will and also self-harm, how dare a person say that to me? It wasn't what they said, it was the way I felt about everything. It felt like the solution, but it was more of a problem because it was going to stop me giving it, and it made me feel like I was going to give up my best friend, which was the substance alcohol. So my spiritual awakening, and I know I have one every day when I wake up now, is about living reality. So the reality of my situation took a while, and in terms of the educational variety of waking up to myself and what fellowship can do, I needed time to absorb it, needed time to understand that although people seemed happy and scratchy and horrible or just miserable, they were sober and I wasn't. So sometimes people get a thunderbolt and it's the happiest moment in their lives. For some like me, it takes a bit of time to actually say, well, I've always been powerful in my own head and my outlook and what I did, but not realising it was all based on dependency and fear. So I had to have a remodelling of my outlook. So the educational variety of my experiences, fellowship has been the highest and most important thing that has ever happened to me, but it took a bit of time to understand that I needed it rather than disregard it and head straight back out to the pub, which is what I did. So if I didn't share that truthfully, you might say, how can it be happy, joyous and free from day one? Well, for some people it is. Lucky them. It took me a while. I went through an awful lot of pain for some years trying to get to grips with my powerlessness. And then I let go and said, yes, I am powerless over alcohol, and every time I take a drink, life will become more unmanageable, and unmanageable just altogether, because it will take me back to the dark past. It's the dim dark past now. It's a few years. Anyway, how I felt yesterday. Actually, yesterday the mouse man came. The mouse expert, if you like, the pest and rodent control person, who was jolly nice, I have to say. He said, oh no, it's not that you kept the flat dirty, it's the fact that it's nice and warm and that the smell of bread was going straight through all the pipe work throughout the flats. So if there happened to be a Mr. Mouse or Mrs. Mouse about, they would have said, oh great, organic bread, let's go for it. And one of the little buggers was in the loaf when I came home, which gave me a nasty shock. So I'm afraid the pest control man has left some measures to help me with my problem there. This has a lot to do with the recovery. In the past, I would have gone out and got a gun or a machine gun and I'd have waited there, put out some nice cheese and a bit of organic bread and waited for the buggers to come back. But of course they wouldn't come back when I was there with my machine gun, would they? So, you know, a sledgehammer to crack a nut. That's how I would work it. I would put all my energy into mouse control rather than say, okay, I'll leave it, ask for help. The man's coming, he's coming back in a couple of weeks to take away the bodies. As if, well, they may just realise it's not a safe place. Anyway, it's good to know that we can get wrapped up in small detail rather than look at the big picture. My life is sober. I'm dealing with all the stuff that I need to deal with, generally, and now mouse on top. And the mouse situation has been dealt with. Although I did see them running around from time to time. Not a good feeling, I have to say. Anyway, last night I got to a meeting, at a hut nearby, in the middle of Chelsea. Would you believe it, there is a hut. And we have quite a lot of meetings there. So, our hut meeting last night seems to get big and crowded these days. And, you know, at one stage it was down to 2 or 3 people, unfortunately, because some people wanted to run it their way, and it's scared everybody off. But it's got back to being big and crowded, because some of us did stick around to nurture it a bit. So, newcomers and old-timers, listening to experience, strength and hope, and then an eager clamour to share about recovery. And it was funny. It was a very funny meeting, and funny people sharing funny things, and then serious people sharing very, very serious things about life and death. But somehow this is not always the case. We seem to pull ourselves up rather than drag ourselves down. So even those with a very heavy heart probably went away with less of a heavy heart, or certainly it wasn't made worse, but opened them up to the truth of other people's difficult times. So we're not alone, and if we can get to share. And I thought, well, all these hands are going up around me, I'll keep my hand down and just listen. And in that particular meeting, it's a nursery school as well, so the kids have been putting up animals on the wall, and there's about 8 or 9 cats in various 5-year-old drawings and paintings. And all the cats look like they've had a really good night out on the tiles. And it always reminds me, I could have looked like any of those cats. One with an ear missing, one with black eyes with little dots, one with blank eyes and expressions, but that's the way kids draw. That could have been me. That's me out on the tiles. So our surroundings do impact on us. And one of the posters on the walls says, we are all different, but we all have similarities. And that's one of the things in AA we know. If we listen for the similarities rather than the differences, if we look for differences, we're judging. If we look for similarities, we get identification with other people. So, yes, I see many conflicts of opinion and outlook, and that was true last night. Yet we still bond over our common issue, simply to be sober today. And we had outside people who I'd seen in other meetings who didn't speak last night. I think part of the reason they didn't speak last night was the view of the speaker at the beginning was quite strong and very humorous, and I guess ideology, dogma don't fit with where they were, and they're very much in the idea of freedom. Freedom is back once we stop drinking. So that can shut some people up who have particularly dogmatic ideas about how we go to any length to keep sober. We can go to any length to keep sober as long as it's the length that suits us, which is right for us, not somebody else's lengths, which is something that happens. So if anybody tries to control you in AA, best to say no, thank you. So step 1, our main taproot, I was thinking about this morning, to learning how to be sober today. Powerless over alcohol and happily powerless over people, places and things for a day. This means I have every freedom open to me for a person living and managing my choices based on life as they are. So my choices as they are. Real options based on reality today. And that's the key. Real options based on reality today. Just a couple of things from previous years on this day. Loved and accepted. To be loved and accepted, we start with ourselves. For being human and fallible. Because if we actually say to ourselves we are human and we are fallible, we can keep on learning new stuff. We make amends and forgiveness for how we have behaved in active addiction. We have to learn how to forgive ourselves for being, it's the way I put it, even though we were at our worst, it was the best we could be in that moment. And sometimes the consequences of our horror has very long-lasting effects. It certainly did for me. And it impacts in different ways. The consequences are different for different people. With humility we keep sober. We can forgive everyone everything. There is one path, the human path of life or living. Forgive always, accept and deal with the consequences. But if we break the laws of society, the consequences are as dire as they can be. But if we break other laws to do with how we treat ourselves and other people, there is forgiveness, I guess, which we can come to as time goes by, as we make amends in our life. And another one, when we are new to recovery life, it is very difficult to shake off shame and guilt. We forget we have a malady, and that malady is the addiction, the fear, the covering up, shame, guilt associated with improper deeds in our lives, and law breaking too, because sometimes we don't know we're breaking the law until we've broken it, and we don't break the law until we've done something when we're at our worst, even though it was the best we could be in that moment. So consequences will always be there. But we had a malady, and we have a malady. Admit and accepting our alcoholism is the first step. There is no shame or no guilt once we accept. We need deal with the consequences following on from that, and then live a new life one day at a time. Amends and humility always. And that's very, very true if you've been locked. I was never imprisoned for anything. Although I do look back and think, how on earth did I not get imprisoned for whatever offences I may have committed under the influence, especially when it comes to basic day-to-day stuff. That haunts me. But for the grace of God go I, or but for the grace of a mishap. You know, the emotional pain is where I got to with people, because I was just such a painful person. I never wanted to be horrible, but tormented by life and drink. I did become horrible, but sometimes people get imprisoned as a consequence. In blackout they do things that they don't even know, or driven by the addiction, they keep on doing things which are so blinking horrible and harmful they get locked up. And what I do know is that people who have been locked up for considerable amounts of time and have found sobriety and how to live life one day at a time have acceptance around their situation and the consequences, however they may turn out. Yeah. Life is difficult at the best of times, no matter what is going on, but it's made worse if we are addicts who go back into addiction or fall back and relapse or slip. And normally the reason why those things happen is because we are overwhelmed by our situation. We become overwhelmed, think we ought to be able to solve it, and don't ask for help. So if I ask for help, I don't feel right. If I say it soon enough, I haven't made a mountain out of a molehill. I'm still dealing with a molehill rather than a mountain. And my whole life was full of mountainous horror before I got to sobriety. And if it hadn't been for family, especially my sister, I don't know how I would have coped in the end. Anyway, I owe my life. And I continue to owe my life to family, friends, community, and a fellowship. I'm included, a part of, as best I can be, with the freedom to choose. There we go. And there's something in the post. Enough. I will put the rest of my words and feelings and thoughts on my blog, and I'll try and make a link within the YouTube page. At the end of my videos I will share the Serenity Prayer, which is to God or good conscience, depending on your belief system. And the good news in fellowship is your belief system is your belief system. Don't dismantle your beliefs or faith for the sake of another person. Stick with your faith and belief as it suits you and fits with your outlook. So whether you're agnostic, atheist or believer, and I've been all at different times in my life, I'm happily able to say, for me, God is truth, love and wisdom, which comes to me from outside sources and is not necessarily generated from within, because that would mean I'm trying to be God and I can't be. Don't want to be, never can be. It's not my role in life. My role in life is to live my path. So to God or in good conscience, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, always for me in the moment and just for today.